She was asleep, just woken up in bed when Atkinson came back to the flat. They'd been in a 3-year relationship, and he was angry when he saw her bags packed in the hallway. And he went into the room, he picked the knife from the kitchen, he chose the knife that would do the job, and he just started his attack on her. Once again, she fought back and fought back, but he turned her around. He made her face him. He carried on his assault until she stopped moving. And dear Poppy ended up with over 100 injuries, 49 knife wounds and 23 stab wounds. And if Rishi Sunak is listening, we would like to meet you. We would like to go through our cases in detail with you.
I know this is very difficult, but can you explain to people listening what happened to Meghan and why you are calling on the Prime Minister to change sentencing in this area?
Okay, Meghan was in a new relationship. Obviously, after COVID, young people have been cooped up for a couple of years. She just got out of a toxic relationship, and she was starting to gain confidence in, like most young people, going out to start living their lives. She had met somebody at work. They'd been texting for 3 weeks. I think they'd only met a couple of times outside of work. And then he invited her to his home. His parents were out, and she went, expecting it to be, it was a mutually agreed arrangement, shall we say. Once she was there, we don't know what time she was killed, but within 20 minutes, half an hour, he'd strangled her. She did fight back, but then he walked around for 10 minutes before deciding to go and get a knife out of the kitchen. He then sliced her neck 14 times with such force that it went straight back into the spinal column, which we believe was to decapitate her. There was other evidence that contributed to this, although the judge didn't accept that. And then he calmly put the knife in the dishwasher before going and get himself showered, cleaned up, sending her a text telling her she was amazing, before going down, getting a sheet to wrap her in before he dragged her out to her car. He then drove her car, which he didn't have a driving license, threw her phone in a hedge, went to a remote area, threw her over the wall, then calmly went and dumped her car by changing his clothes in the process in the back seat. These actions are just traumatic, horrific, and absolutely unbelievable. Yet his starting point was only 15 years. Yes, he got aggravating factors, but it's not right.
I mean, Elaine, anybody listening to you talk about what happened to Meghan will be, we're lost for words, but the fact that the starting point for sentencing was so low, what are you asking the government to do now?
They need to review the sentencing guidance. Carole and Julie have worked really hard on putting forward proposals for consultation. I think the government have agreed to consult on. And these proposals take into account overkill, and there are definitions by which we believe that the overkill statement, if you like, the definition of, will actively help towards increasing the sentences that these killers are given.
There's a 10-year disparity. If somebody takes a knife out into the street and can stab somebody once, it's automatically a 25-year starting point. If somebody violently murders somebody in the home, multiple stabbings, strangulation, decapitation, dismembering of body, the starting point for sentencing is literally 15 years because the weapon is used at the home and found in the home and not taken to the scene. And it's an affront to women because only 9% of women are actually killed in the street, but 74% are domestic homicides. And what we know about these domestic homicides is that they are extremely violent. They involve overkill. And our argument is that these perpetrators, they're no less dangerous than the dreadful men that killed Zara Alina and Sabina Nessa, and yet they're given the most lenient sentences. And this government has promised us that violence against women and girls is one of their top priorities. So why is this disparity not being addressed? myself and Julie have been campaigning for the last 4 years, and it's been painfully slow. And it was just insulting last week to read in the papers that Rishi Sunak can just make an announcement just like that, that now killers who kill women, perpetrators who kill women in the streets, can now expect a whole life order. And it just makes this disparity even wider.
Elaine, I mean, obviously, this is a really distressing issue, and it's a hard one to talk about, but it is something that has affected you personally. Can you tell us about Megan?
Megan was an absolutely adorable human being. Everybody who knew her saw her. She'd always had a smile on her face. She cared about people. She loved deeply. She loved with a whole heart, and she loved everybody. Didn't matter who they were. She just had this ability to make you feel comfortable. She was just such a warm human being, and what can I say? She's just greatly missed by all who knew her. During the trial, we were asked for a picture of her where she wasn't smiling. We couldn't find one. And I think that in itself speaks volumes about the kind of person she was.
And clearly, you know, this has changed all of your lives in a way that none of us, most of us, will never be able to imagine. Just, I suppose, to sort of finish, if you could tell us a little bit about Ellie and just how hopeful you are that the government is going to hear you and is going to make the changes that you're asking for now.
Well, Ellie, like Megan, like Poppy, was delightful. She had an amazing future ahead of her. She was halfway through her A-levels, and Thomas Griffiths was a fellow student in the sixth form. And it was a 3-month relationship. Just probably the last month of it, he became a bit controlling over her, and she decided to end the relationship. On the Friday morning, he came to our house because he knew she was home alone studying, and he strangled her. She fought and fought back. She scratched his face. She tried to get him off her, but he wouldn't stop. And if that wasn't enough, he then picked up a knife, a kitchen knife, and he stabbed her 13 times in the neck. All these perpetrators completely focus on themselves. There was no shock about what he had done. He then wiped his DNA off the handle of the knife, put the knife in her hand and reinserted it into one of the wounds in her neck to make it look like suicide. Very similarly, Poppy's case was equally horrendous. She was asleep, just woken up in bed when Atkinson came back to the flat. They'd been in a 3-year relationship, and he was angry when he saw her bags packed in the hallway. And he went into the room, he picked the knife from the kitchen, he chose the knife that would do the job, and he just started his attack on her. Once again, she fought back, but he turned her around. He made her face him. He carried on his assault until she stopped moving. And dear Poppy ended up with over 100 injuries, 49 knife wounds and 23 stab wounds. And if Rishi Sunak is listening, we would like to meet you. We would like to go through our cases in detail with you. You talk in your article about sentencing. There needs to be honesty in sentencing. Well, can we please talk to you, tell you about our cases, and you tell us where these cases should sit in sentencing, because a starting point of 15 years is an affront to women. You talk about your daughters, you talk about wanting it to be a safer place for them growing up. Well, it's the home that's the dangerous place. Your daughters would be more likely to be murdered in the home. And these lenient sentences you're giving out to these very, very dangerous men are not keeping your daughters safe at all.